I was out of town negotiating a major business deal, only to find out my wife had used her title as a board director to call an emergency meeting. Her goal was to force her male assistant into the role of the new chairman. The nation. I called my wife, demanding an explanation, but she just calmly said, "Thongding He is my child. That makes him your stepson, so by all rights, he is qualified to help run the group." And with that, she hung up the phone. But she has no idea that I am the true mastermind behind the group and the executive director personally appointed by the old master himself. The Jiang Group. Since when does an outsider get to boss us around? I immediately booked a flight back to headquarters. I have to show certain people exactly whose name is on this massive empire. The car screeched to a halt in front of the headquarters building, sharp screech of the tires burning against the asphalt echoing in the air. I threw the car door open. The freezing wind slapped my face, reflecting off the towering glass facade, instantly turning the sweat on the back of my shirt into an icy chill. The moment I stepped through the revolving doors, Secretary Liu rushed over to meet me. He has been my loyal subordinate for years, but right now, his face was completely pale. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the folder in his hands. "Mr. Jiang, thank goodness you're finally back." I didn't say a word. I didn't even slow down. The sharp click of my leather shoes on the marble floor echoed through the empty lobby. Secretary Liu hurried to keep pace, lowering his voice to a whisper. Director Liu contacted more than 10 media outlets first thing this morning. They're already waiting right outside the conference room. This board meeting is completely violating protocol. She bypassed your authorization entirely, calling this meeting under the guise of an emergency. She claims it's to keep the company stable and that we must appoint a new leader immediately. I let out a cold sneer. Keep the company stable? She just wants to use the media to create hype and force that incompetent fool Song Sing into the chairman's seat, making his succession a done deal. The elevator floor numbers flashed by rapidly. Secretary Liu's anxious voice kept coming. Several of the veteran board members tried to object, but Director Liu shut them down by claiming the old master gave her verbal instructions before falling into a coma, using that to silence them. He was already doing advance interviews with a few media outlets. I reached out and pressed the button for the penthouse executive elevator. The mirror reflected the storm of emotions brewing in my eyes. He sure knows how to make up stories. The elevator doors slid open with a sharp ding. The conference room door at the end of the hallway was cracked open. A low buzz of voices drifted out, accompanied by the rapid clicking of camera shutters. Riraya really went all out to set up this massive show. Secretary Liu's hands were trembling as he clutched the folder. "President Jiang, should we go in now?" I ignored him and walked straight up to the doors. I raised my hand and slammed the heavy wooden doors open, sending them crashing against the walls with a deafening bang. Instantly, the noisy room went dead silent, like a tape suddenly cut off. Every single eye in the room snapped toward me. New Ariane was sitting right next to the head of the table, the smile freezing instantly on her face. Song Yinghe was wearing an expensive suit that didn't fit him at all, his hand holding a water glass frozen in midair. Around them, the board members looked either stunned or panicked. The reporters in the corner were even quicker, immediately raising their cameras as the flashbulb went off in a blinding frenzy. Standing at the doorway, I scanned the entire room before finally locking my gaze on Liu An's face. Carefully made up, but unable to hide her sheer panic. The air froze for a few seconds. "Sully," I spoke. My voice wasn't loud, but it echoed through the conference room like a sudden clap of thunder. "I'm not even here. Who gave you the right to hold a board meeting?" When the conference room doors were shoved open, the camera flashes were all aimed at Song Sing-hil, who was sitting next to the head of the table. He was wearing a haute couture suit that was clearly borrowed at the last minute. His tie was crooked across his collarbone, and a rehearsed fake smile was plastered on his face as he raised his glass to the cameras. He looked utterly ridiculous, like a little kid who had sneaked into his parents' closet to play dress-up. Uriel was sitting right beside him, her fingers unconsciously fidgeting with her watch. The moment she saw me, her pupils instantly contracted, but she quickly forced herself to look calm, tilting her chin up, as if trying to assert her authority and claim a victory that was already hers. Secretary Liu's voice was frantic. "President Jiang, Director Liu said that Song Sing-hee is your stepson." I didn't even wait for him to finish. The heady thud of my leather shoes on the carpet sounded incredibly sharp in the dead silence. Song Sing-hee clearly didn't expect me to show up out of nowhere. His hand froze in midair, still holding his glass. The smile completely slid off his face. He scrambled to his feet, the hem of his suit jacket sweeping a pen right off the edge of the desk. He must have been drilled by Liu Yan 1,000 times, because he blurted out his greeting with deliberate, desperate haste. His voice even carried a desperate, brown-noosing tremble. "Mr. Jiang, what are you doing back so soon? Mom said you were out of town, handling a major deal, and we didn't want to disturb you." I paused in my tracks. My eyes locked onto his face, slicing through him like a scalpel. I've had to look at this face for 2 whole years. From the moment he applied to be my assistant, as Lu Ruyan's distant relative, barely scraping by, clocking in at the very last second every day, to when he started throwing his weight around the department using her name, despite not even knowing how to fill out a basic reimbursement form. I always just figured he was some useless freeloading relative Lu Ruyan had dumped into my company, so I chose to turn a blind eye. I never imagined he was a ticking time bomb she had planted right next to me all along. The reporters around us immediately smelled blood. In an instant, every camera lens whipped around to face us, and the room grew so quiet you could hear a pin drop. My voice wasn't loud, but cut through the room like shards of ice. Who are you talking to? Since when did I ever acknowledge you as family? Song Sing-hee's face instantly flushed a deep, ugly crimson. He looked as if he had been violently slapped. His lips trembled as he stammered. My mom brought me here. You're her husband. That naturally makes you my step-parent. I let out a dry laugh, though the humor never reached my eyes. When Liu Ruyu married me, you were already 18 years old, weren't you? You were long past the age of needing a parental figure to look after you.
And let's get one thing straight.
Your last name is Song, and mine is Jiang. As from the incredibly awkward fact that you are Liu Ruin's son, we have absolutely no connection. Liu Ruixia slammed her hands on the table and stood up, her heavily made-up fake eyelashes trembling with rage.
Jiang Chen, do you really have to be this cruel?
No matter what, Xing is still my... I whipped my head around to look at her, the sheer, icy hatred in my eyes, enough to freeze her on the spot. Still your what? Still the parasite you hid from me and planted right by my side for 2 whole years? Or was he just a tool you've been grooming all along to steal the Jiang Corporation for your precious son? With that, I pulled a thick document out of my briefcase. I slammed it hard onto the conference table. It was the official authorization letter for the group's executive director. Right next to the old man's personal signature was the red stamp of the notary office. The date on it was clearly written. Late autumn of last year, the exact day he regained consciousness after his first emergency resuscitation. I raised my voice, making sure everyone could hear me. Directors and friends from the media. I'm afraid some of you don't know yet. According to the group's bylaws, not only am I the general manager, but I am also the sole executive director personally appointed by the old man himself. Any meeting involving the group's core decisions cannot be held without my signed approval. I tacked my finger on the clauses in the document, each word as solid as iron. Liu Ruyan, you bypassed the executive director, fabricated the old man's final wishes, and pushed an assistant, who can't even read the group's organizational chart, into the chairman's seat. You even went out of your way to invite the media to create hype. And you're telling me this is to reassure the public, or is it an outright abuse of power? Song Xinghie was probably terrified by this sudden turn of events. All of his forced composure from moments ago vanished completely, leaving nothing but sheer panic. The way he instinctively shrank behind Liu Ruing made my stomach turn. For 2 years, this man, who wandered around right under my nose every single day, had been hiding his true colors all along. Just moments ago, he was playing the family card without even blinking. It was absolutely nauseating.
You looked at Song Xinghie.
My gaze is freezing as the dead of winter. And as for you trying to climb the social ladder and wanting a hand in management, you'd better ask yourself if you're even worthy. The Jiang Group's empire was built inch by inch from the mud by me and the old man. It's not for a rat hiding in the shadows like you to lay your hands on. With that, I stopped looking at him and walked straight toward the head of the table. As I passed by Liu Ruyan, her shoulders were trembling. There was shock and fury in her eyes, but not a single shred of guilt. I sat down at the head of the table, lifted my wrist, and checked my watch. The video conference for the acquisition was scheduled to start in 1 hour. I swept my gaze across the room. The voice echoed in the dead, silent conference room, rattling everyone's eardrums. Let me ask you again. When I'm not here, who gave you the right to call a board meeting? It's me. That voice cut in right as my words faded. Looking toward the sound, I saw a man with slightly long hair and a full beard walking into the conference room. It was actually my uncle, whom I hadn't seen in ages. For him to suddenly show up at a critical moment like this, and the way he looked at me didn't hold a single ounce of his past warmth. This uncle of mine had a complete falling out with grandfather 10 years ago. Back then, the family wanted to arrange a marriage between him and another powerful family, but he absolutely refused. He had his heart set on a girl from an ordinary family, insisting on marrying her no matter what. Grandfather was so furious, he smashed his teacup and pointed at the door, telling him to get out. Either forget about her and accept the arrangement, or never call himself a part of this family again. But he stiffened his neck, packed his bags, and took the girl away that very night. Since then, there had been absolutely no word from him. During these 10 years, grandfather went from being hale and hearty to bedridden, from falling into his first coma last winter and needing emergency resuscitation to now being kept alive by machines in the ICU. The family made countless phone calls and sent endless messages. They even pulled strings to ask around for his whereabouts, but he had vanished off the face of the earth. He didn't even reply with a single word of greeting. Grandfather loved him the most out of all his sons. Before he lost consciousness, he even gripped my hand and kept muttering his name. Yet even now, with the lines on the monitor barely showing a pulse, he still hadn't shown his face. But of all days, today, at this exact critical moment, when Liu Ruoyan is trying to push Song Xinghie into the chairman's seat, he actually returned. He didn't look at Song Xinghie's panicked face, nor did he glance at the chaotic crowd of board members. His gaze was fixed, dead on my face. There was no warmth of a long-awaited reunion in his eyes, nor the scrutiny of an elder looking at a junior. There was only a frozen, silent indifference. It even carried a trace of barely noticeable hostility, like he was looking at a stranger standing in his way. But on Liu Yuan's face, There wasn't a hint of panic. She even slowly and deliberately tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment all along. The arrogance I had just suppressed instantly flared back up. He leaned back in his seat, completely relaxed. The sheer provocation in his eyes was practically overflowing. Clearly, my sudden arrival at the venue, and my uncle barging in right now, were all part of his scheme. My uncle's hair was so long it covered half his ear. A thick, unruly beard covered his entire jawline. His faded, worn-out jacket was caked with the dust of travel. But those eyes, they still held the exact same stubbornness from when he used to talk back to the old man. Except now, as he looked my way, there wasn't a single shred of warmth in them. He stood there at the entrance. His eyes swept across the messy, chaotic conference room, before finally locking onto my face. His gaze was so cold and foreign. It was as if we were meeting for the very first time. He casually tugged at his collar. A cold sneer curled under his stubble. Jiang Chen, it has been years. You've certainly treated your grandfather's legacy as your own, to tear to shreds. The air in the room instantly froze. The reporters' cameras rapidly panned between me, my uncle, and Liu Rian. The relentless clicking of shutters was absolutely suffocating. Underneath the table, my hands slowly clenched into tight fists. I thought it was just a fire in my own backyard. But little did I know, this fire had already spread to the very foundation of our family. Even a kite that broke its string years ago has been reeled back in to be used as a pawn against me. Ignoring my icy glare completely, my uncle swept his gaze across the conference table, as if inspecting his own territory. Suddenly he reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick stack of documents, and slammed them onto the table with a loud thud. The creased, curled edges of the paper were still stained with dirt. It was obvious he had been carrying them around for a very long time. He tugged at the collar of his jacket. His voice, raspy from years of wandering, boomed. Don't you dare talk to me about being the executive director. For these past 10 years, I might not have touched the group's affairs, but I, Jia Yushen, have always been a member of the Zheng family, and I am still a part of this group. He leaned forward, stabbing his finger hard against the signature line of the top document. It was the old man's signature, an official seal from 10 years ago. Though slightly faded, it was still perfectly legible. He looked up and swept his gaze over the entire room, before locking eyes with me once more. A mocking smirk played on his lips. See this? Back then, the old man left me 25% of the shares. Who among you holds more than I do? A collective gasp echoed throughout the conference room. The faces of several elder board members instantly turned pale as ash. Combined, all of their shares don't even add up to 30%. And although I hold the authority of the executive director, my personal holding is a mere 18%. My uncle's voice suddenly rises, each word striking like a hammer on cold steel. Put it bluntly, I am the largest shareholder of this group. He pauses, his tone dropping to absolute freezing. Right now, the chairman is lying in the ICU, unable to speak, unable to move. By law, the largest shareholder calls the shots. As the major shareholder, I have absolute authority over this group right now. Those words land like an icy axe, chopping right at the very foundation of my executive authority. The reporters' cameras flash relentlessly, everyone holding their breath in the tense silence. Because everyone knows, in a capital game where equity is king, a single word from the largest shareholder can render any corporate charter completely useless. The smugness on Yu Ruyan's face practically overflows. She claps her hands softly, her voice dripping with honey, yet carrying an undeniable authority. You are absolutely right, Big Brother Zhao. Now that you're back, it is only natural that you take charge of the group. Song Xinhing looks like he just found his savior. His spine straightens right back up as he quietly slips behind my uncle. I look at the stack of files on the table, and then at my uncle's cold, lifeless eyes. He hasn't shown his face in 10 years. Yet he chooses this exact moment to show up with his shares. He claims to be a John, but every single word out of his mouth is helping outsiders tear down my grandfather's legacy. This isn't a family reunion. This is a hostile takeover, and he's brought a tribute to the enemy to seize the throne. Under the table, my hands clench into tight fists, my knuckles digging so hard into my palms that they ache. So, Yuruya's trump card was never Songxing. Yeah, it was this major shareholder she kept hidden for 10 years. She knew my executive power couldn't stand against his majority shares. She knew my uncle's deep-seated resentment toward my grandfather would be so easy to exploit. And she made sure the media would be here to witness it all, leaving me completely helpless as they strip me of my power. My uncle glances at the pale, defeated board members and finally turns his eyes to me. The hostility in his eyes is no longer hidden. Jiang Chen, if you know what's good for you, hand over that authorization letter right now. My uncle Jiang Yinshan barks. The conference room is so dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Even the air feels heavy, and everyone is holding their breath. Reporters from over a dozen media outlets are holding their breath, their camera lenses quietly pointing at me, with the shutter sounds muffled to the absolute minimum. Everyone is waiting to see how the executive director who has led the Zhang's group for years, this swift and decisive leader, will react in the face of absolute majority shares. Will I bow and compromise? Or fight to the bitter end? I stare at that stack of dusty share documents on the table, their edges already curling. My fingernails dig so hard into my palm, leaving deep, painful marks. They dig so deep, they are almost embedded in my flesh. Spasms of sharp pain radiate from my palm, but they can't suppress the overwhelming wave of coldness surging in my heart. 25% of the shares, a full 7 percentage points more than my personal 18%. When Grandpa personally transferred those shares to my uncle's name back then, I stood right there beside them, watching it happen with my own eyes. Back then, my uncle was in his prime, full of pride and ambition, with a sharp, confident look in his eyes. He was the most promising eldest son of the Zhang family, and the designated heir to the entire group. Grandpa patted him on the shoulder and said with deep solemnity, "These shares are a safety net I'm leaving for you, son. And they are also the roots of the Zhang family. No matter what happens, never throw away this family bond." But Grandpa probably never would have imagined, even on his deathbed, that these very shares, meant to preserve their father-son bond and filled with so much hope and expectation, would turn into a poison-tipped dagger 10 years later, stabbing deep into the Zhang's group, the empire he spent his entire life building, and slashing at the family legacy I have fought with all my might to protect. All to make him the new I slowly stand up, the shoulders of my tailored suit pulling perfectly straight. As my aura instantly dominates the entire conference room, I let my cold gaze sweep inch by inch over my uncle's face. A face now masked by travel weariness, resentment, and malice. There is no anger in my heart, only a bone-deep disappointment and coldness. Over the past 10 years, Grandpa went from being strong, upright, and in complete control to being bedridden and dependent on medicine. From his first sudden brain hemorrhage and emergency rescue last winter to now, lying helpless in the intensive care unit, he is covered in tubes, barely keeping alive on a ventilator. We sent countless messages in the family group chat. We made hundreds of phone calls and even begged people all over the country to search for your Rayovots. But you vanished into thin air without returning a single word. Not even a simple greeting. Whenever Grandpa was conscious, he would always hold my hand tightly. His shriveled fingers would dig desperately into my wrist, muttering over and over, "Where is my eldest boy? Where did my eldest son go? Is he still blaming me? Is he never coming back for the rest of his life?" Those cloudy eyes were filled with nothing but fatherly love, holding endless worry and regret. But did he know that Grandpa has fallen into a deep coma again? The line on the heart monitor is so weak, it could flatline at any second. Yet this eldest son, the one Grandpa doted on the most, never showed his face even once. He didn't even reply to a single message. And now? Look at him, clutching those outdated shares from 10 years ago, stepping onto the stage that Liu Yan so carefully set up, returning with all his might, acting like he's the grand savior of this zombie company. My uncle's face stiffened for a second. The embarrassment of having his sore spot poked vanished in an instant, replaced by an even colder sneer. He took a step forward, his finger practically stabbing into my face. "Who do you think you are to lecture me?" he spat, arrogant and overbearing. "I am the eldest son of the Zhang family. These shares are mine, by right, and my say in this corporation is only natural." Natural? I suddenly burst into laughter. It wasn't loud, but it carried a bone-chilling cold that shattered the dead silence of the meeting room, shaking the table so much that the water glass trembled slightly. Every single word of mine was as cold as freezing water in the dead of winter. I pressed one hand against the edge of the table, leaned in slightly, my gaze cutting like a knife, piercing right into the depths of his eyes. "Then, do you know that when Grandpa woke up from his coma last year, he used his last ounce of strength to sign a declaration with the highest legal authority?" The moment the words left my mouth, I slowly pulled another document from the briefcase beside me. The paper was crisp and flawless, the edges perfectly neat, forming a stark, stinging contrast to his tattered, dust-stained share documents. I gently placed my document right next to his share certificate, my fingertip landing firmly on the bright red notary stamp. It was blindingly red, unquestionably red. "This is the supplementary agreement Grandpa signed from his hospital bed, witnessed and recorded by 2 notaries, with a nurse acting as a proxy signer, where every single word is legally binding." I spoke slowly, pausing on every word, my voice clear, steady, and powerful, echoing through every corner of the conference room, making sure every director and reporter present heard it loud and clear. The agreement states in black and white that the 25% of Zhang Group shares held by Zhang Jingsan during the period he has been missing for over 5 years will have their voting rights fully represented by the executive director, Jiang Chen, and can be restored once he returns to the family in a legitimate manner and is confirmed by the executive director himself. I looked up, staring straight into his pupils, which had shrunk in sheer disbelief, my voice bone-chillingly cold, completely devoid of warmth. "Look at yourself now. What kind of legitimate manner is this? Bringing in outsiders to crash the board meeting? Using 10-year-old documents to force a takeover? Scheming with Du Yan to push out the executive director? And fabricating grandfather's final wishes? Is this what a member of the John family does, according to you? Without my confirmation, your voting rights are absolutely worthless." As my last words hung in the air, my Uncle Cozy shuddered, violently, as he'd been struck over the head with a heavy blow. The arrogance and smugness on his face, along with his strength, vanished in an instant, leaving behind nothing but utter horror and panic in his trembling eyes. He stared down at the supplemental agreement, his eyes glued to the clauses, his lips trembling as he let out a few dry, raspy gasps, unable to utter a single word for the longest time. Beside him, the smug smile on Yu Ruyan's face instantly collapsed, her heavily done-up makeup failing to hide the sheer panic in her eyes. She sprang up from her chair, her high heels making a sharp, frantic clicking sound on the carpet, and shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "This is a fake, Zhang Zhen. How dare you forge grandfather's deathbed statement? Do you have any respect left for the rules of the Zhang family? Is there no law anymore?" "A fake." I turned my head, casting a cold, indifferent glance at her. The icy warning in my eyes made her take an instinctive step back, her face turning deathly pale. In an instant, "Secretary Liu, patch in the live video call with the notary office. Let's make sure the board members and our friends from the media see clearly whether this agreement is genuine." Secretary Liu immediately stepped forward, opening a laptop that had been prepared beforehand. His fingers flew across the keyboard, and in less than 3 seconds, the face of the municipal notary office director appeared on the screen. He was dressed in a formal suit, his expression dead serious, holding a supplementary agreement in his hand, one that is identical to the one on my desk. The notary public clearly reads out the date of the agreement to the camera, along with the terms and the notary registration number. Even the old man's heart rate monitor records from the exact moment he signed, and the hospital room security footage are all displayed on the screen as screenshots. The chain of evidence is absolutely airtight. The studio beep on the screen. The old man is lying in his hospital bed. His face is as pale as a sheet, and his breathing is so weak it is barely audible. Yet, his eyes are sharp, and his gaze is resolute. Word by word, he tells the notary, "I, Zhang Zhenheim, am of sound mind, and of my own free will. I delegate all voting rights of my eldest son, Zhang Junshun's shares, to my grandson, Zhang Chen. This decision is final and cannot be revoked. Let this serve as proof." That was one of the few moments of clarity during the old man's battle with his illness. Every single word was spoken with all his strength, just to protect this family business, to protect the Zhang Group, and to protect my future. The reporter's lenses immediately whip around, pointing straight at the computer screen. Cameras click frantically once more. But this time, the tide is clearly turned. A few of the veteran board members, who had been sick with worry, let out a massive sigh of relief. Vice President Wang leans back in his chair and can't help but scoff. "I knew it. The old man had it all figured out." He covered all his bases way in advance. My uncle's face pales, turns green, and then darkens with rage. His hand trembles uncontrollably as he clutches the share documents. His knuckles turn white from the sheer force of his grip. The paper crumpled into a tight mess, as he is about to tear it to shreds. He probably never in his wildest dreams expected that the old man, who always seemed so gentle and soft-hearted, would keep a card up his sleeve on his very deathbed, instantly cutting off his last bit of leverage and completely shattering his pipe dreams. "So what if you have the voting rights?" He strains his neck, roaring with the very last ounce of his confidence, though his voice is visibly trembling and hollow, all of his previous arrogance completely gone. "The shares are still in my hands. I am still the largest shareholder of the Zhang Group. That is one thing that will never change." I pick up the supplementary agreement and lightly tap it on the desk, letting out a sharp, crisp tap. Each tap feels like a heavy hammer slamming straight into my uncle's chest. The very last clause of this agreement. "I don't think you read it clearly at all." I rest my fingertip firmly on the very last line, reading it aloud, slowly and deliberately. My voice is cold as ice, cutting through the room. "If any shareholder uses illegal means to interfere with the group's normal operations, maliciously instigates internal conflicts, or disrupts the stability of this company, the executive director has the absolute right to freeze all returns on their shares until a general shareholders meeting is convened to make a final ruling." I look up. My gaze is frigid as a frozen lake. There isn't a single shred of warmth in my eyes. "You've colluded with Yu Ruyan to coerce the executive director, thinking to $100 board meeting, fabricated the old man's dying wishes, and even brought in the media to put on a show, all in a desperate attempt to force this inheritance into reality. Tell me, does that, or does that not, count as illegal?" My uncle opens his mouth, but only dry, raspy wheezes escape his throat. He can't squeeze out a single word. He stands frozen, looking as though all the life has been drained right out of him. In an instant, his entire posture collapses. Seeing this, Liu Yan panics. She desperately reaches out, grabbing his arm, hoping he can somehow salvage the situation. But my uncle is consumed by the sheer rage of being played. He's drowning in resentment and absolute despair. He violently flings her hand off him. He shoves her back so hard she stumbles 2 steps backward, nearly crashing to the floor. Liu Yan stands there, completely stunned. Her face is a mask of pure shock and disbelief. Only now does she finally realize the truth. From the very beginning, she was nothing but a pawn. A tool for my uncle to get revenge on the old man and take back what he claimed was his. And now that the pawn is useless, my uncle won't even bother to play along. Why would he care if she lives or dies? Over in the corner, Song Sing-hee has already been scared out of his wits. Any trace of the calm, mature front he was trying so hard to maintain has vanished. He curls up in the deepest corner of the conference table, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. His head is buried so low, he doesn't even have the courage to look me in the eye. This cowardly, sniveling wreck is a far cry from the smug, self-assured kid who was putting on a show for the cameras just moments ago. It's frankly pathetic to watch. I lift my wrist to check my watch. The hands point to 3:10. The video conference for a $100 million acquisition with overseas partners starts in less than 20 minutes. I can't let this farce drag on any longer.
Secretary Liu, I instruct in a deep, calm voice.
My tone is quiet, yet it carries an unquestionable authority. Mr. Zhang. Secretary Liu steps forward immediately. Her expression is respectful, yet tense. Take Mr. Zhang to the penthouse lounge to rest. Without my permission.
He is not allowed to leave.
And absolutely no one is to contact him privately. My cold gaze sweeps over my uncle. I say flatly, until the auditors thoroughly investigate all of Lu Wuan's accounts over the past 2 years and untangle every single financial transaction between her and Mr. Zhang.
We will hold off on the official shareholders meeting. Then we will settle this score once and for all.
Yes, sir. Secretary Liu responds instantly, turning to gesture toward the door.
2 security guards wearing black uniforms,
Tall and heavily built, march quickly into the conference room.
they walk straight up to my uncle. My uncle tries to resist,
Stiffening his neck as he roars.
Zhang Chan!
How dare you lock me up? I am the eldest son of the Zhang family. I own shares here. You have no right to do this.
I cast a cold glance at it, completely ignoring his outbursts. I don't even bother giving him another look.
The guards grab him by both arms and drag him forcefully toward the door. Even as he is dragged away, my uncle refuses to give up.
He glares back at the supplemental agreement in my hand and suddenly lets out a sharp, venomous sneer. Zhang Chun,
You think this is over? What grandfather owed me back then, I will take it all back, piece by piece, with interest.
The Zhang Group is mine!
No one can take it from me. His screams fade further and further into the distance. Even after he is dragged out of the conference room, his voice echoes down the corridor before finally dying out.
Liu Yan slumps back in her chair,
Completely drained of strength, her face as pale as death.
her once flawless makeup is now a ruined mess.
Her eyeliner smudged, her lipstick smeared. Her eyes are hollow and numb,
And every ounce of her previous arrogance has utterly vanished.
like a toothless tiger.
He was utterly powerless to stir up any more trouble.
I turned to the reporters in the room, my voice calm yet commanding. Every single word was crystal clear, carrying immense weight. My friends, from the press, today's farce ends here. All operations at the Zhang Group are running normally and in strict accordance with company bylaws. We will release an official announcement shortly. All legal documents presented today, including shareholding certificates and notarized materials, are available for public review through our public relations department. We welcome the scrutiny of the entire public. The reporters were no fools. Reading the room instantly, they tactfully began to pack up. They stow away their cameras, closure quarters, and notebooks, whispering among themselves as they headed out. Their hushed voices were filled with awe at how fast and ruthless this power struggle reversal had been. Before long, the conference room finally fell completely silent. Only a few core directors and Secretary Liu remained. I walked over to the head of the table and sat down, picking up my phone to call our overseas partners. Instantly, my tone returned to the cool, steady composure of someone who handles $100 million deals. I apologize for keeping you all waiting, I said smoothly. I had to handle a brief internal matter. We can now begin our video conference regarding the acquisition. Outside, the bright sunlight streamed through the massive glass curtain wall, spilling across the conference table. The warm glow perfectly illuminated my grandfather's handwritten signature on the supplementary agreement. I reached out, my fingers gently tracing that familiar handwriting. In my heart, I whispered, "Grandpa, watch me closely." I secured the family business. No one is taking it from us. But in my heart, I knew this was just the beginning. Now that my uncle's 10-year-old ticking time bomb had exploded, it wasn't going to end with a single blast. His deep-seated resentment, Ruya's bitter refusal to back down, the illicit financial transactions hidden in the shadows, and the old grudges from 10 years ago, along with the leverage yet to surface. They all meant this war was far from over. The real battle, the real storm, was yet to come. The video conference for the acquisition lasted for a full 1.5 hours, successfully finalizing every single term of our partnership. The other party was highly impressed with the Zhang Group's strength. They sang nothing but praises for my quick decision-making in crisis management, and we agreed to officially sign the contract in 1 week. A deal worth hundreds of millions was finally in the bag. Hanging up the video call, I massaged my throbbing temples. Just as I was about to catch my breath, Secretary Liu quietly slipped into the office, holding a freshly printed, still warm preliminary audit report. His face was so dark, it looked like a storm was about to break. Anxiety was written all over his face as he murmured, "Mr. Zhang, the audit team has some preliminary results." He gently placed the report in front of me, keeping his voice incredibly low, as if terrified of being overheard. Over the past 2 years, Liu Rian took advantage of her authority as a director and your complete trust. Through Son Xinghe's personal account, she transferred out $7,368,200
200 yuan across 12 separate transactions.
Every single transfer went through gray accounts. Layers of disguise. It was almost impossible to detect.
My fingertips rested on the report. My eyes swept across the dense rows of transaction numbers
And transfer dates.
and my brow furrowed. Among them, there are 3 major transactions, each exceeding 2 million yuan. The recipient is an offshore company registered in the Cayman Islands. Secretary Liu paused, his tongue growing even more serious, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The beneficiary information for this company is heavily encrypted, so we can't identify who is actually behind it yet. But the audit department compared it with our archives from 10 years ago and found that the registered address, contact info, and email prefix are an almost perfect match for the first shell company your uncle registered when he took Baining Ding and left the Jiang family back then. My fingertips froze instantly. My heart skipped a beat, and a sudden chill rushed from the soles of my feet, straight to the top of my head. I knew it. I originally thought Liu Rian's alliance with my uncle was just a temporary move to push Song Xinghe to the top. But looking at it now, this game is far deeper than I ever imagined, far more dangerous, and far more insidious. The collusion was never some spur-of-the-moment alliance. I'm afraid from the very first day, Liu Rian married into the Jiang family. She already had her eyes on my uncle's network, quietly reaching out and secretly setting her trap, secretly transferring funds, biding their time for a whole 2 years, just waiting for the old man to fall critically ill and striking at the perfect moment. When I went out to handle business, we wanted to completely drain the Jiang group. There is one more thing, Secretary Liu added, lowering her voice even further, almost whispering right into my ear. The security team just reported that they accidentally overheard Mr. Jiang on the phone outside the lounge. He sounded incredibly agitated, almost frantic. He kept mentioning what happened back then, talking about using leverage to bring down Jiang Kong. He also mentioned having something of the old man's in his possession, something big enough to ensure the Jiang family can never recover and completely ruin Jiang Chan's reputation. I looked up, my eyes darkening, the air around me instantly turning freezing cold. Who is he? Based on his tone, it didn't sound like Liu Ruan. It sounded more like Baining, the girl who ran off with him all those years ago. I fell silent for a moment, my fingertips lightly tapping on the desk as my mind raced to piece together all the clues. The grudge from 10 years ago, the fabricated truth about the child's death, the secret company transfers, the leverage on the old man, and Liu Rian's embezzlement, the issues surrounding Song Xing, and my uncle's deep-seated resentment. All of these clues tangled together, forming a massive, airtight web. At the absolute center of this web lay my uncle's unresolved 10-year grudge, and Liu Rian's insatiable, ruthless ambition. Get the car ready. I stood up, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair, my voice steady and cold. President Jiang. Where are you going? Secretary Liu asked hurriedly. The hospital? I said in a low, grim voice. I'm going to see grandfather. The intensive care unit was dead silent, save for the rhythmic, cold beep of the monitor. Mechanical, chilling, and completely heartless. The old man lay there on the hospital bed, his face as pale as a sheet, his eyes tightly shut, with wires and tubes running all over him, a ventilator rising and falling slowly, barely keeping him alive. The lines on the heart monitor were almost flat, like a stagnant pool of water, with only the occasional, tiny fluctuation, proving he's still locked in a brutal tug-of-war with death, refusing to give up. I sat down on the chair by his bedside and gently took hold of his frail, withered hand, covered in age spots, with his veins slightly bulging. Those very hands used to clap my shoulder with strength as he smiled and say, Jiang Chen, this family business is going to rest on your shoulders. Don't let your grandfather down. Those hands had once pointed at my uncle's departing figure, his eyes red and brimming with tears, as he choked out, I'm afraid he'll never get over this hurdle in his heart. Not in this lifetime. It's all his father's fault. I let him down. Those hands had once held a pen to sign countless contracts, holding up the entire Jiang Corporation on his own. Grandpa, I whispered, leaning in close, my voice barely a whisper, but strained with a hint of hoarseness. Uncle is back. He came back with the shares from 10 years ago, burning with resentment towards you, and he's teamed up with Liu Ruyan. They want to bleed dry everything you've spent your entire life building. But don't you worry. I held the line. I squeezed his fingers, applying a bit of pressure. At least, I've held it for now.
Jiang Corporation still belongs to the Jiang family.
No one is taking it from us, and no one is going to destroy it. The second those words left my mouth, I felt the fingers in my palm twitch. Ever so slightly. It was incredibly faint. The 20 pebbles, but it was real. My heart leaped into my throat. I scrambled to press the call button. The doctors and nurses rushed into the room. After a thorough examination, the doctor smiled at me. Don't worry, Mr. Jiang. This is just a normal neuromuscular response. But it does mean he still has some level of consciousness left. This is a great sign. A sign of improvement. A wave of relief washed over me. I gently let go of his hand, took one last look at the old man lying in the hospital bed, and turned to walk out of the ICU. Just as I reached the end of the hallway, my phone suddenly started buzzing. An unknown local number flashed across the screen. No contact name and no location tag. I hesitated for a moment. Before pressing the answer button, a woman's voice came through the line. Soft and gentle, with an hint of timid hesitation and an underlying nervous anxiety.
Excuse me, is this President Jiang Chen?
I replied in a low voice. In a calm tone, she said, "Hello, President John. I am Bai Ming." The moment the name Bai Ming hit my ears, my footsteps froze. Leaning against the cold wall, my heart sank. She was the woman my uncle had risked everything for, completely breaking ties with the family patriarch, giving up everything just to run away with her. For 10 years, there had been absolutely no news of her, as if she had vanished off the face of the earth. And yet, at this critical juncture, she was calling me out of the blue. "Ms. Bai, is there something you need?" I asked, suppressing the shock in my heart.
My voice was flat. The less Woodley time with us,
betraying absolutely no emotion. "I'm waiting for you at the coffee shop downstairs from the hospital," she said, softly, her voice carrying a desperate, pleading urgency. "It's about Jiang Jungshan and Liu Ruyang. I have some things here that I need to show you in person. These things will unravel all the mysteries, and they can save both the Jiang family and Jiang Corporation." I was silent for a few seconds before replying coldly. "Wait there.
I'll be right down."
The coffee shop downstairs from the hospital was very quiet, with soft, gentle music playing in the background. Warm sunlight filtered through the glass windows, casting a glow over the tables and chairs. It felt warm. Yet it couldn't dispel the deep chill in my heart. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, immediately spotting Bai Ming sitting in a corner booth. She looked to be around 40 years old, dressed in a faded, washed-out light blue cotton dress. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, loose bun, with no makeup and absolutely no jewelry. Her face bore the quiet fatigue and fine lines carved by years of financial struggle, anxiety, and ceaseless toil. Yet her eyes were so clean, clear, and bright, just like the ordinary, innocent girl standing next to my uncle in that old photo, smiling so beautifully without a single trace of materialism or scheming. In front of her sat a battered black leather suitcase. It was worn and peeling, its corners chipped and battered. You could tell at a glance it had been used for many years. It had followed her through all her struggles and wanderings. Seeing me sit down, she immediately stood up in a panic, bowing slightly. She looked incredibly tense, almost humble, and extremely cautious.
"Mr. Jiang,
"You're here." I nodded and took a seat. "Please, sit down, Miss Bai. No need to be so formal." Hearing this, Bai Ming took a deep breath, as if making a massive decision. She reached out and gently pushed the old leather suitcase toward me. As it sat on the table, it made a soft thud. "This is the suitcase Jiang Jinshan left at my place when he returned to Jiangchang this time." Her voice cracked, choked with emotion. Her eyes grew bloodshot, tears welling up in them. "Before he left, he told me he was going back to the Jiang family to take back what belongs to him. He wanted to make John Jinhai pay the price and destroy the Jiang Corporation. I knew something wasn't right. He's been completely blinded by hatred all these years. I'm so afraid he'll destroy himself. And even more afraid he'll ruin the Jiang family and ruin you." I opened the suitcase. There were no valuables inside. No cash. No jewelry. Just an old laptop and a stack of yellowed, curling writing paper that had been meticulously preserved for years. It held secrets that had never seen the light of day. "There are 2 things in here," Bai Ming said, pointing at the laptop and the letters, her voice trembling slightly. "First, all of Jiang Jinshan and Liu Rulian's chat logs from the past 6 months. Second, the real reason he left the Jiang family all those years ago, and the lie Liu Yuan fabricated to deceive him for 10 whole years." I opened up the laptop and clicked on the chat history folder. Right there, staring back at me, was Liu Ruan's profile picture. I scrolled down, reading through the messages one by one. The contents were absolutely sickening. Every single word dripped with cold calculation, fueled by pure greed and malice. That wicked woman, Liu Ruyan, hadn't just promised my uncle 20% of the Jiang Corporation shares once they successfully seized power, guaranteeing him a lifetime of luxury. She had also deliberately spun a monstrous lie. She told my uncle that the death of his first child with Bai Ming hadn't been from congenital heart disease at all. Instead, she claimed the old man, for an arranged marriage, had secretly bribed the doctors, deliberately cut off the baby's medication, and stood by to watch the child die. It was this very lie that drove my uncle completely insane. Bai Ming covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face and splashing onto the table. For the past 10 years, he had suffered so much, working odd jobs, setting up street stalls, hauling heavy cargo, sleeping under bridges, and enduring endless mockery and contempt. He was bullied at every turn. All that time, he harbored a deep, burning resentment toward the old man. And when Liu Lian found him and fed him that poisonous lie, it was like he became possessed. He convinced himself that the Jiang family owed him, convinced that the old man had murdered his child. We was hell-bent on coming back for revenge, hell-bent on destroying absolutely everything. My fingers froze over the keyboard. My heart went cold, a bone-chilling dread washing over me. So, the thorn in my uncle's heart wasn't the forced marriage from back then. It wasn't even the rift between father and son. It was a thorn that Liu Ruan
that venomous woman had been deliberately driving deeper into him for 10 long years, tearing his flesh apart, leaving a wound so deep and festering that it could never, ever be healed.
Mr. Jiang, I know I shouldn't have come here to disturb you.
And I have no right to face anyone in the Jiang family.
Ban Yingbing wiped away her tears, her eyes turning fierce and resolute. But the Jiang family is Jing Shan's home. It is his bloodline. I can't just stand by and watch him destroy himself. And destroy everything.
I can't just stand by and watch him completely destroy himself. I beg you, please save him. Help us protect the Jiang family's legacy.
And save the Jiang Corporation. I closed my laptop and looked at her. My tone was sincere and solemn. Ms. Bai,
Thank you. If it weren't for you,
the Jiang family would have faced a terrible disaster this time. Everything would have been completely ruined.
she shook her head and stood up,
Looking lonely and dejected.
tired and helpless.
I should go now. If Jing-san finds out I came to see you,
He'll lose his temper again.
President Jiang, please be careful. Neither Ryuai nor Jing-shan will let this go easily.
Watching her slender, exhausted figure and her fragile swaying back as she walked out of the cafe,
I suddenly realized, in this power struggle farce, the most tragic person was never the greedy, power-hungry Li Wuyan. Nor was it my uncle, who was blinded by hatred and consumed by revenge.
instead, it was someone like Ban Yingbei, trapped by lies and obsessions. She was so kind and gentle.
Yet, she couldn't even find her way home anymore. Back at the Jiang Group headquarters,
The moment I stepped into my office, Secretary Liu was already waiting at the door, his expression even more grim than before,
and filled with panic.
fine beads of sweat even covered his forehead.
President Jiang,
We have a problem.
a huge problem.
He rushed forward and handed me a joint petition from the shareholders.
The paper crumpled from his tight grip. After Uncle Lee left the lounge, he secretly contacted 7 of our minority shareholders. Together, they hold 20% of the shares. Now they are jointly demanding an emergency shareholders meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. There is only one item on the agenda: to remove you from your position as executive director
Re-elect the leader of the group.
and freeze all of your authority.
I took the petition, glanced at the signatures, and a cold, mocking smile played on my lips.
They certainly move fast, but some people are just in a hurry to meet their doom. I nodded.
I took all the evidence Ban Yingbing brought,
The screenshots of the chat records,
forensic audit report from that year.
and the bank statements of the offshore company, shoving them all in front of Secretary Liu.
Get ready.
Compile all this evidence into a PPT presentation.
Make sure the originals are backed up, along with copies.
And contact the notary office.
Also, make sure all the attending doctors from the hospital back then are invited to the venue tomorrow.
At tomorrow's shareholder meeting. It's time to settle every single score, once and for all. Outside, the setting sun filtered through the glass wall, painting half the sky blood red. They cast long, stretching shadows across the floor.
I picked up the supplementary agreement on the desk.
The old man's signature glowed warmly in the fading light, like a solid shield backing me up. My uncle, Luria, and all those dark, scheming minds lurking in the shadows. Tomorrow, it all ends.
A final, absolute end. Back in my top floor office,
The setting sun filtered through the blinds, casting a pattern of light and shadow across the floor.
like a silent net, wrapping around the entire room.
I ditch-locked the evidence Bai Ningying brought into the safe.
When the front desk phone rang urgently,
The ringing was piercing. Mr. Jiang, there is a Mr. Lu Ming downstairs.
he claims to be Li Ruyan's brother, and he brought 3 lawyers with him, demanding to see you. He's being extremely aggressive.
And he even threatened to trash our reception desk. Liu Ming. The cold smirk on my face deepened. The chill in my eyes grew even darker. They were nothing but ordinary shopkeepers from a small county outside Jiangcheng. Back when Liria married into the Zhang family,
His parents came to our door in person.
grinning from ear to ear as they humbled themselves, saying they were marrying way above their station, that they wouldn't dare ask for anything. Like,
Or cause any trouble for our group. But look at them now.
now that his sister has fallen, and her scheme has been exposed. If the brother shows up at our doorstep with a team of lawyers, he's clearly come well prepared, egged on by Li Ruan and bought off by my uncle, hoping to squeeze one last fortune out of us. Let them up.
Be in my office in 5 minutes.
I gave the order flatly, my voice completely calm, without a single hint of emotion. I hung up the phone, leaned back in my office chair, and closed my eyes, waiting for this absolute joke of a drama to begin. Not even 5 minutes later,
My office door was slammed open with a deafening crash.
Lu Ming burst in, wearing a black suit that was clearly way too big for him.
His tie was crooked, his hair slicked back with grease, and a bloated, angry look on his face. He looked so incredibly arrogant and full of himself.
Behind him were 3 suits, arrogant, self-righteous lawyers, clutching thick legal folders.
With pure contempt in their eyes, Lu Ming marched right up to my desk
And slammed a lawyer's letter down with a loud slap. The papers rattled from the force, like he was trying to shatter the wood. Junction, my sister has been treated like absolute trash. You better give the Liu family an explanation right now, he shrieked.
his voice grating and obnoxious. By what right did you suspend my sister from her position on the board?
And how dare you hand Song Xinghe over to the authorities? This is a total abuse of power. You're just bullying our family. One of the lawyers quickly stepped forward, flipping through his papers,
and said slowly, Mr. Jum,
under company law, Miss Li Ruan can only be removed from the board by a vote of the shareholders.
your unilateral suspension is a direct violation of regulations.
Furthermore, there is zero evidence to support the financial charges against Mr. Song
Jie-shi. We demand his immediate release.
and a full annexation of his reputation. I stared at these complete clowns and suddenly burst out laughing. My laughter was ice cold, filled with pure, mocking disdain. Since when did your pathetic family become some prestigious dynasty? How come I never heard of this? Since when did the elite circles of Jiangchong allow petty little merchants like you to strut around?
Leaning forward slightly,
I stare coldly at Liu Ming. My voice is ice cold. Last month, you lost $80,000 at the Mahjong parlor.
Thax cornered you at the door, demanding the money. You almost got your legs broken. Who had finance wire you $50,000 to save your skin?
Who got those loan sharks off your back? Just because of your sister. Who set your family up with a steady business, making sure you never have to worry about money?
Did you forget all of that?
Liu Ying's face turns a dark, angry red, shamed and furious. He screams hysterically. That's because you were terrified of my sister making a scene. You were afraid she'd expose all your dirty laundry. You were afraid she'd expose how you drained the company dry.
Draining the company.
I let out a cold laugh, slamming the audit department's full report right in front of him.
Sheets of paper scatter across the table.
Open your eyes and look at this very carefully. Over the last 2 years, Liu Ruan abused her position to embezzle $7,360,000. She routed the money through Song Xinghe's accounts, funneling it directly into offshore shell companies. Every single transaction, every single signature, and every single record is right here. It's crystal clear. The evidence is absolutely undeniable.
Song Xinghe is getting investigated because he's dirty. He got exactly what he deserved.
The three lawyers grabbed the report, flipping through the pages frantically.
Their faces grow incredibly pale.
Their smug, arrogant expressions vanish instantly, replaced by sheer panic. They look utterly lost.
But Liu Ming refuses to back down.
He whips a photo out of his pocket and slams it onto the table. Don't you dare try to lie your way out of this. My sister told me everything. You're sleeping around, having an affair with your marketing director. If you want a divorce, you have to pay my family $10 million in compensation. Not a single cent less. The photo shows me and the marketing director in a conference room, simply discussing a project, taken from a deceptive angle
And maliciously cropped.
It makes the situation look incredibly scandalous. I pick up the photo and rip it in half, letting the torn pieces drift onto the table. I will have the legal department draw up in the necessary agreements immediately. My voice is completely cold, without a trace of emotion. As for compensation, only after Liu Ruan returns every single cent of the over 7 million yuan of embezzled public funds will we even discuss it. Until then, you won't get a single penny.
How dare you! Liu Ming slams his hands down and stands up abruptly.
Leaning heavily over the desk, he leans his body forward, glaring at me with pure venom. His eyes are wild with madness as he snarls. Let me tell you something, Jiang Chen. My sister has incriminating evidence against your grandfather from back in the day. If she leaks this to the public, the Jiang Group's stock will crash instantly. Your entire family will be utterly ruined. Every single one of you will be hauled in for investigation. The moment he says this, even the three lawyers sitting nearby freeze in shock. Their faces are filled with utter horror, completely unable to believe what they just heard. Clearly, even they had no idea the so-called evidence existed. My eyes narrow, and the air around me instantly grows cold and heavy. The temperature in the entire office seems to plummet. To stare at him coldly. What else did she say? My glare makes Liu Ming's heart race with panic, but he forces himself to bluster. My sister said that the evidence is an old financial ledger. It is more than enough to keep the entire Jiang family under our thumb. If you release Song Xinghe right now and give our family 5% of the Jiang Group shares, we'll let this go.
Otherwise, we'll drag you down with us. Nobody walks away from this clean.
Fine. I suddenly relent, my voice completely flat as I am discussing a minor, insignificant detail. Nuo freezes, clearly not expecting me to agree so easily. A flash of smugness and ecstasy crosses his face as he sneers. See? Wouldn't it have been easier to just do this from the start? Now, hurry up and get the share transfer agreement. Ready. I will wait for Liu Yuan to hand over this so-called evidence, and only then will I agree to your terms. And look at him, pronouncing every single word slowly, with absolute, unshakable resolve.
Liu Ming's eyes shift suspiciously.
He immediately pulls out his phone, walks over to a corner, and dials Liu Ruan's number. He whispers a few quick words. Hanging up the phone, he turns back to me with a smug, arrogant grin. My sister said it. The evidence is in the safe at her apartment. The password is her birthday. Let's go.
Come with me right now to get it.
Once we get it, you hand over those shares. I raise my wrist to check my watch. 11 o'clock at night. There are only 8 hours left until tomorrow's emergency shareholders meeting.
Let's go. I stand up and grab my jacket.
My voice is perfectly calm. In the elevator, Liu Ming keeps rambling on, threatening me while bragging about himself. I ignore him completely. I look down at my phone and text Secretary Liu. Look into the backers behind the law firms of those three lawyers. See who the actual controller is. Also, contact the loan sharks who lent money to the Liu family back then.
Go to the Liu family's ancestral home and tell them that John Chen is washing his hands of Liu Ruoyan's debts.
Tell them they can deal with it themselves. They can collect whatever debts they need to collect
And seize whatever property they need to seize.
The car pulls up right below Liu Ruoyan's apartment building. Lu Ming excitedly leads the way upstairs.
His steps light and bouncy.
It's as if he's already secured the shares
And reached the absolute peak of his life.
The moment the door opens, a pungent stench of stale smoke, cheap alcohol,
And rotting takeout hits me square in the face.
the living room floor is completely littered with empty bottles, cigarette butts, and discarded takeout boxes.
Dirty clothes are scattered everywhere. The place is an absolute landfill.
You would never guess a corporate director lived here. It looks worse than a rundown slum.
The safe is in the bedroom closet.
Lu Ming points toward the bedroom and rushes inside.
This is it, he says, his voice dripping with urgency.
Just enter my sister's birthday, and we'll get the evidence inside. We'll have your Zhang family completely by the throat.
Before I can even utter a word,
Yu Ming's phone suddenly starts ringing like crazy.
the shrill, piercing ringtone sends a sudden wave of panic through the room.
Annoyed, he snaps the phone open and answers.
But after just a few seconds of listening,
All the color drains from his face.
his entire body goes completely limp.
With a heavy thud, he collapses onto the edge of the bed. The phone slips from his hand and crashes to the ground.
The screen shatters.
It's over. It's all over.
He mumbles to himself.
His eyes completely hollow and desperate.
My house. It was trashed.
The deed is gone.
My sister put up our ancestral home to get a $3 million loan shark deal. The debt was due half a month ago.
The loan sharks trashed the place and they're seizing the house. I pick up an unopened bottle of liquor from the floor and place it gently on the table.
My voice is flat and cold. The loan shark just called me, asking if I wanted to cut you some slack.
I told them the Liu family's mess is none of my business and that they should just do whatever they have to do.
Mewing suddenly snaps his head up. His eyes are filled with pure terror and manic rage. It's you.
You're the one who sent them. How can you be so heartless? I ignore his screaming.
Looking down at him as if he were nothing but an insect. Right then,
His phone rings again.
It's a call from his mother.
her wails are agonizing.
Lu Ming's hand shakes as he answers.
After listening to just a few words, he suddenly drops to his knees with a thud and crawls to my feet.
He clings to my leg, weeping uncontrollably, tears and snot streaming down his face.
Mr. Zheng, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, I beg you, save my parents. Save my family. If we lose the house, my parents won't survive this. Please, I'm begging you. I'll beg on my knees.
Get up, I say coldly, handing him a tissue. There is not a single trace of warmth in my voice.
He scrambles to his feet, looking absolutely pathetic, his face covered in tears and snot. I can pay off your debt, and I can save your ancestral home. I look at him. My voice is calm.
But you must tell me the truth.
What exactly is this evidence the old man claims to have?
Tell me everything. Do not leave out a single detail.
Liu Ming nods frantically.
Like a woodpecker, not daring to hide a single thing.
I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. It's a photo. A photo of an old ledger my sister got from Jiangju Shan.
She said she could use it to control the Zheng family,
But that ledger was actually forged by Grandpa Zhang's business rival back in the day.
specifically to smear the Zheng family's name. It's not even real. My sister was just using it to scare you, trying to scam you out of shares and money. I walked over to the safe,
Answered Nurian's birthday.
But it said the password was incorrect.
I paused for a moment.
And entered the date when my eldest uncle left the Zhang family 10 years ago.
Click. The safe door swung open.
With a sharp, crisp sound, there was no so-called evidence inside.
No ledger.
Absolutely nothing that could threaten the Zhang family.
There was only a thick stack of bank transfer receipts.
Every single recipient was an offshore company my uncle registered years ago.
The earliest transaction went back to the 3rd month after Liu Ruoyan married into the Zhang family. And the latest was just last week.
The amounts were astronomical.
At the very bottom of the pile lay a promissory note. Nuriya had mortgaged the old Liu family estate to borrow $3 million.
The borrower's signature was clear as day, dated just half a month ago.
The messy handwriting was filled with sheer desperation. Staring at the receipts and the promissory note, Liu Ming
Felt his knees go weak and collapsed completely to the floor. The floor, his face turning deathly pale.
He cried out in utter despair. So my sister was in bed with Zhang Yingshan all along. Our family was just his stepping stone from the very beginning.
We were just his sacrificial lambs. Go back and tell your parents, I said, packing up all the documents. My voice was cold and resolute.
I will save the family estate.
And I will pay off the loan sharks.
But Yu Guya and Songxing here made a grave mistake and treacherous the ultimate line.
No one can protect them now, and no one can save them.
We will face the consequences.
I turned around and walked out of the apartment.
Hang me.
Liu Ming let out a desperate, piercing wail, sounding like a beaten dog.
Once I got downstairs, Secretary Liu was already waiting in the car.
He handed me a file, his expression deeply respectful.
Mr. Jiang, we've looked into it. The actual owner of those 3 lawyers' firm is your uncle's childhood friend.
He specializes in fixing dirty lawsuits.
The so-called evidence
was actually forged by the old man's business rivals years ago. The legal department already has the original copies. The evidence is absolutely ironclad.
I flip open the folder, and a cold smirk plays on my lips. There are only Thinghouse left until the shareholders' meeting. The real show is just getting started.
The next morning, at 9, the shareholders' meeting room is even more packed than yesterday's board meeting. Aside from the shareholders and directors, over 20 financial news outlets have rushed here after catching wind of the drama. Cameras are crammed everywhere. Wall to wall, the studio lights are absolutely blinding. Everyone is waiting to watch this ultimate showdown of the Jiang family, the final reckoning. My uncle sits in the prime seat on the left. His hair has been cropped short, and his beard is clean-shaven. A neatly pressed, dark suit brings back a hint of his former dignity as the eldest son of the Jiang family. But the sheer malice in his eyes hasn't faded. He glares at me like a wounded beast. Liu Rian is sitting next to him. Her makeup is flawless, yet it cannot hide the sheer panic in her eyes. She looks haggard and hopeless, her lips completely pale. Her hands tightly clutch the edge of her coat, and her entire body is trembling. Last night, the audit department sent full proof of her embezzlement to every single shareholder. The measly shares she holds are now completely worthless. She doesn't even have the right to speak anymore.
Fang Xinhe is nowhere to be seen.
Word is, Secretary Liu handed all the evidence over to the authorities last night. Investigators interrogated him overnight, completely shattering Song Xing's mental defenses.
Staring at the ledgers, he wept as he confessed to everything, fully implicating Liu Ruan in her crimes. The moment the host announces the start of the meeting, my uncle slams his hand on the table and bolts upright. His voice is loud and hysterical. Waving a share certificate from 10 years ago, he screams to the entire room, "I propose the immediate removal of Jiang Cheng from his position as executive director." He forged a supplementary agreement. He siphoned group assets, abused his power for personal gain, and bullied his own elders. He's not fit to run the Jiang Corporation at all. A few minority shareholders he bribed immediately chimed in. The conference room instantly buzzed with noise. It was complete chaos. I didn't rush to speak. I simply gave Secretary Liu a nod, and she immediately turned on the projector. As the screen lit up, the giant screen was crystal clear. The first video was the complete archive from the notary public's office. The old master was lying on his hospital bed, reading out the supplementary agreement in a weak but clear voice. Every single word was loud and clear, leaving no room for doubt. The second video projected chat logs provided by Mai Ming. In them, Liu Huya addressed him as uncle, and the screen was packed with fabricated lies, promises of shares and fund transfers, shocking everyone in the room. The third slide showed the bank statements of an offshore company, clearly showing that Liu Huya had transferred millions of dollars to uncle's company. The evidence was ironclad. Finally, I projected a stack of yellowed letter paper, zooming in on the handwriting. It was an apology letter the old master wrote to uncle 10 years ago. The handwriting was shaky, but it was filled with fatherly love, guilt, and deep concern. My eldest son, Dad was so foolish back then. I am sorry. Dad begs for your forgiveness. Dad has always been waiting for you to come home. Uncle's face turned pale instantly. His lips trembled, and he sat frozen in his chair, transfixed by those words. He couldn't utter a single word. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. 10 years of hatred, 10 years of obsession, and 10 years of pain completely collapsed at this very moment.
Chang Qingshan.
I stood up,
My voice cutting through the absolute silence of the room.
It was clear and powerful, carrying immense weight. The shares in your hands are real. Your hatred for Grandpa is real. But the fact that Liu Ruyan used you as a pawn, and that you've been blinded by lies for 10 years, is even more real. I pointed to the archived hospital records and medical certificates on the big screen. He told you that Grandpa caused the death of your child?
But the actual medical records show
That the child passed away from congenital heart disease. When Grandpa heard the news, he stood outside the ward for a whole night, and half his hair turned white. I looked toward the door as a gray-haired old doctor walks into the room. He was the chief doctor back then. He is a highly respected man. Dear shareholders, I can testify to that. Back then, old Mr. Jiang indeed donated a massive sum of money. He had a heart of pure gold, and it was nothing like what those wicked people claimed.
Uncle snaps his head up, staring at the apology letter in my hand.
And then, at the medical records on the big screen. Suddenly he covers his face, letting out a choke, broken, heart-wrenching sob. 10 years of hatred, 10 years of wandering, 10 years of agonizing pain. Turns out, from the very beginning, it was all just a carefully planned scam. It was nothing but a sick joke.
As for Qingchoi assets,
I pass around the latest audit report
and speak in a calm, steady voice. Over the past 5 years, the market value of the Jiang Corporation has tripled.
My personal shareholdings have never changed. All profits have been reinvested back into the group's growth, employee benefits, and charitable causes. Instead, it was Liu Rian who used your shares as collateral
to run up a $20 million debt with loan sharks.
And now, the loan sharks are at our door,
demanding to auction off your shares to pay off that debt.
Liu completely breaks down.
She slumps in her chair, screaming like a maniac as she's dragged away by security. He did it willingly,
The Jiang family owes me.
I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. No one pays any attention to her wild ravings. Everyone looks at her with utter disgust.
The shareholders turn their gaze toward Uncle.
With complicated expressions.
Some feel sympathy, some feel regret, and others feel disappointment. Uncle slowly lowers his hands
And looks at me with bloodshot eyes. He looks out the window at the Jiang Corporation building. His voice raspy and dry.
And filled with deep guilt.
Jiangshen, I was wrong.
Grandpa's waiting at the hospital.
I interrupt him. My voice is calm and gentle. It's over now.
You could go see him.
Apologize to him.
He's always been waiting for you to come home.
Uncle is stunned.
He suddenly stands up and bows deeply to all the shareholders, bending his waist incredibly low.
Filled with remorse, he says, I was foolish. I let myself get used. I almost ruined the Jiang family.
And destroyed my father's life's work.
I withdraw all my motions.
Jiangshen will continue to serve as the executive director.
The voting rights of my shares will still be fully represented by him, and I will never back out.
The room falls dead silent for a few seconds.
Then, a warm and lasting round of applause erupts,
The applause is thunderous.
echoing throughout the conference room.
Uncle walks to the door, then turns back to look at me. In his eyes, there is finally a long-lost warmth. The warmth of family and guilt. I'll go see him, he says.
What's waiting for you is his forgiveness, I say softly.
He forces a weak smile and walks away quickly. His back looks less tense, carrying a sense of relief
And lingering guilt.
After the meeting, Secretary Liu hands me the latest document.
With a relaxed look, she says, Mr. Jiang, we found another unidentified offshore transfer in Liu Ruyan's account. It was sent by Song Xinghe's biological father. That man runs gray area businesses abroad and wanted to use Liu Ruyan's identity to launder his money here.
The evidence is rock solid.
I nod.
In a cold, indifferent tone, I reply, hand all the evidence over to the authorities.
We will prosecute this to the absolute limit. The setting sun falls across the empty conference table, warm and peaceful,
Chasing away all the darkness.
Secretary Liu packs up the files and don't aim to hide her smile. Mr. Jiang, we finally have some peace.
We finally saved it. I looked off toward the hospital in the distance, gently shaking my head. Keeping a family legacy clean and safe is never a one-time battle.
It is far harder to defend a legacy than it is to build one.
And the hardest thing of all to guard is the human heart.
Just as the words left my mouth, my phone suddenly started ringing off the hook.
It was a nurse from the hospital.
Her voice was bursting with excitement.
Cooking back tears as she gasped. Mr. Jiang,
You need to get to the hospital right away. Your grandfather is awake. He is fully conscious, and he keeps calling out your name.
he's even asking for his eldest son, too.
A jolt went straight through my body.
I grabbed my coat and bolted out the door,
My feet flying.
but my heart was swelling with warmth.
With hope. And with a profound sense of peace. In the elevator, looking at my reflection in the mirror, I suddenly smiled. A smile of pure relief, of absolute lightness, of complete peace of mind.
Grandfather is awake.
Our family is still whole, and the Giant Corporation is still standing.
As for the storm still lurking in the shadows,
Let them come. No matter what they throw at me, I can take it, and I will defend my family to the very end. The legal aftermath of the whole ordeal quickly degenerated into a pathetic public circus. Desperate for a lighter sentence, Song Xinghe threw all the blame onto Liu Ryu.
sulking that she had forced him into everything,
He claimed he knew absolutely nothing, that he was completely innocent,
and that he was just a victim who had been used.
Furious, Liu Ruyan dropped all pretense and tore into him, pulling out bank statements and pointing out that Song Xinghe had pocketed all the money, showing how every cent had gone straight into his account. He spent it all like water,
And she was the one who had been dragged down by him and deceived by his lies.
but the bank records did not lie, and the evidence would never lie. The law doesn't play favorites. Every cent of those embezzled funds ended up in Song Xing's personal account, fueling his lavish, out-of-control lifestyle. The sum was astronomical, and the circumstances were extremely severe. Ultimately, the authorities dealt with everyone involved according to the law. Both of them paid a heavy price for their actions.
As for the Liu family, they didn't stay idle for long.
They were still desperately trying to cling to the rich and powerful, always looking for a shortcut. Once Liu Rian finished serving her sentence,
You mean eager to suck up to a newly rich tycoon?
immediately arranged this marriage for her. To keep the tycoon happy, the Zhu family lied and changed Liu Rian's age, making her 5 years younger. They even forged her identity documents. But what no one saw coming,
Was that the tycoon didn't care about the Liu family's status?
nor did he care about Liu Ruyan's looks.
All he wanted was for her to carry on his family line.
The moment Liu Ruyan got out, she was forced to get pregnant. At 40 years old, she was already a high-risk expectant mother. On top of that, years of deep depression and constant, crippling anxiety left her severely malnourished and completely neglected during her pregnancy. When she went into labor, complications arose, and the doctors couldn't save her. She was hastily buried, with not a single soul attending her funeral.
When the news reached us, I was walking with Grandpa in the hospital garden.
After hearing it, the old man only sighed softly. His eyes were calm and serene.
There was no anger, no resentment,
Only a faint trace of pity. It's all fate, he muttered.
Greed is the root of all this evil. Staying true to who you are is more important than anything else.
The setting sun filtered through the leaves of the plane trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground.
It felt warm and gentle.
Grandpa rested his hand on my arm. It was no longer as strong as it used to be, but it felt incredibly steady and reassuring.
Jiangchen.
He subtly spoke, his voice slow and clear.
With deep earnestness, he said, "Protecting the family business is not the hard part. Holding on to people's hearts. That is the real challenge."
I stared out at the distant skyline and nodded, softly. Solemn and determined, I whispered, "Grandpa, I will remember this. I will protect the Jiang family. I will keep our people loyal, safeguard our legacy."
Later on, Uncle came to the hospital every single week, just to sit with Grandpa.
He didn't say much, but he would quietly peel an apple and hand it to him, taking care of him with the utmost devotion.
His way of making up for 10 years of neglect.
Sometimes, Bai Minbing would bring her child along too.
The boy's eyes looked just like Uncle's,
So innocent and adorable.
Whenever he saw me, he would timidly call out, "Big brother,"
his eyes bright, clear, and completely pure.
As for the Jiang group,
I completely overhauled the management.
rooting out all the corruption and cleaning up every dark corner,
I fired every single incompetent executive
and those with divided loyalties,
Streamlined the corporate policies and tightened financial oversight.
Slowly, the company's stock price began to bounce back, becoming even more stable than before, more prosperous.
As our business empire continued to expand,
Late one night, I was still at my desk, going through files.
under the warm glow of the lamp.
Secretary Liu walked in, carrying a warm cup of coffee.
placing it gently on my desk.
As she turned to leave,
The hem of her off-white skirt brushed lightly against the doorframe. I froze instantly. The outline of her profile and her silhouette, they seemed to mirror the Liu Ruyan of years ago.
It was on a quiet night, just like this,
when Ruyan stood at my office door, smiling softly as she said, "Don't work too hard. Take care of yourself." Back then, her eyes were still filled with a shy, tender warmth, free from the greed and manipulation that came later, and untainted by her eventual malice and madness.
"Mr. Jiang, is there anything else?" Secretary Liu noticed my stare.
A faint blush creeping onto her cheeks, she asks in a soft whisper, so gentle, so polite.
I snap out of my thoughts.
Shaking my head gently.
"I'm fine," I reply in a calm voice.
go get some rest.
Thanks for your hard work. She walks away quickly, her skirt hem catching the warm light of the corridor, sharp and decisive, as if she was never lost in thought just moments ago. She always keeps the perfect, respectful distance.
The coffee at the corner of my desk is still warm.
Unlike those fleeting moments of tenderness in my memory, this feels more secure,
More grounding.
and filled with a respectful boundary. I look down and continue going through the files. My pen tip hits the paper, firm and decisive. Outside the window, the lights of Jiansheng are brilliantly bright.
Shining with warmth. Shining with peace.
When you have a home, and you have your family, your heart is finally at ease. The road ahead, the right,
Natter the storms.
no matter the obstacles, I will take it step by step, walking steady and strong. I will guard the Jiang family. I will protect the Jiang Corporation. I will protect everything